Good day, everyone. Now, I want you to imagine that you're in a crowded marketplace where a cacophony of languages, traditions, and customs collide. In one moment, you're haggling for a souvenir with a vendor from a different continent. And the next, you're sharing a meal with a family whose traditions are entirely foreign to your own. So this dynamic, often bewildering but undoubtedly fascinating tapestry of cultures and backgrounds is what we'll delve into today. So our topic is local and global communication in multicultural settings. Today, we will embark on a journey to understand how people from diverse walks of life come together to exchange ideas, information, and stories. We'll explore how the nuances of culture, environment, and personal interpretation shape the way we communicate and why it's crucial to bridge those gaps for effective communication. So, get ready to uncover the secrets of successful communication in a world where borders are blurred and understanding is the key to thriving in our interconnected, multicultural global society. So now first we will tackle what is communication. So we all know that communication is the process of sharing information, ideas, and messages between two or more people. And one of the best example for that is when you send a text message to a friend, you're engaging in communication. So you're sharing information which is the context of the text with the aim of conveying your thoughts or ideas to your friend. So, what is the primary goal of communication? So, the primary goal of communication is to ensure that the information being conveyed is understood by the recipient, and in turn, that the sender is understood. And one of the best example for that is in a classroom. A teacher provides instruction for a project. So the goal of communication here is for the students to understand the instructions clearly, and for the teacher to know if the student have grasped the task. So our recipient for this example is the students and the sender is the teacher. So now let's move on to the next. Importance of shared knowledge. So, successful communication relies on all parties having a mutual knowledge of how signs and symbols in communication come together to create meaning. So, for example, in a workplace, so there may be acronyms and jargon that only employees within the organization understand. So, effective communication within the team depends on everyone sharing this specialized knowledge, ensuring that when certain terms or symbols are used, everyone comprehends their meaning. So, next is the cultural and background variations. So, communication can be complex because it often involves interaction between people from different backgrounds and cultures. So, for example, in a multicultural team, one team member may come from a culture where direct criticism is considered rude, while another team is used to open and candid feedback. So, understanding these cultural differences is essential to avoid miscommunication or offense. So, now let's move on to the next, which is meaning interpretation. It is how people interpret and convey a message can be heavily influenced by their existing knowledge and cultural environment. So, for example, a simple nod of the head can have different meanings in various cultures. In some cultures, it may signify agreement, while in others, it might indicate acknowledgement without agreement. So, misunderstanding such cues can lead to misunderstandings. Next, cultural impact on communication. So, what is considered appropriate in communication can vary from person to person and from culture to culture. So, for example, in some cultures, it's customary to greet with a handshake, while in others, a bow or a hug is more appropriate. So, not understanding these cultural norms can lead to discomfort or even offense in social or business interactions. So, next, cultural sensitivity. So, effective communication requires understanding and respecting the cultural differences of those involved. So, for example, when working with a diverse group of people, it's important to be culturally sensitive. For instance, during a religious holiday, it's respectful to acknowledge and accommodate the tradition and practices of team members who Celebrate it. So, lastly, we have the internal and external differences. So, in the local and global context, it's essential to consider both internal, which is personal, and external, which is cultural, differences when communicating effectively. So one of the best example for this is when conducting business internationally. So, understanding the external cultural differences is crucial, but it's also important to recognize internal differences, such as individual communication, preferences, and styles within a team to ensure harmonious collaboration. So these examples and explanations illustrate the key concepts related to communication and its complexities, especially in multicultural settings. Effective communication requires a nuanced understanding of cultural diversity, shared knowledge, and the importance of clear, mutually understood messages. So, in summary, effective communication involves recognizing the impact of culture, background, and personal interpretation on the way messages are conveyed and received. So, understanding and respecting these differences are crucial for successful communication in diverse settings. So, that would be all in my part. So, I will give the floor to the next reporter.
All right, I have a question. Why effective communication is important in any interaction that one gets involved? Effective communication is as simple as sending message to the receiver, and the receiver decoding the message will understand it and ideally getting a response from the said receiver. However, effective communication is not as simple as it theoretically sounds. In fact, effective communication involves a complex understanding of the symbols and signs that are presented based on the cultures and environment of the communicators. Look at how one communicates the boundaries of his or her home. Despite speaking the same language and coming from the same background and culture, a family member still experience miscommunication, due most likely to differences in age, gender, and personality with which the message is interpreted. Now, take that situation and place it in the global context. Imagine oneself talking with people from different background, culture, and language. The opportunity for miscommunication becomes more apparent the bigger the difference is between the communicators' languages and cultures.
Good day, everyone. I am Rose Bibi Cañete, and I am your discussant this day. So, we are going to talk about culture and intercultural context. So, now let us define what is culture. So, according to Martin and Nakayama 2010, culture is the learned patterns and attitudes shared by a group of people. So it means that one's views and beliefs are shaped by their culture, which in turn affects how they communicate with, interpret, and comprehend the signs, symbols, and messages they come across on daily basis. On the other hand, Gert Hofstede perceived culture as the programming of the mind. So why is this so? So culture is often referred to as the programming of the mind because it represents the set of beliefs, values, customs, norms, and behaviors that are transmitted from one generation to the next within a society. So just like computer programming, it instructs a computer how to function. In culture, culture instructs individuals on how to think, perceive, and act in their social environment. So to sum it up, culture shapes people's worldviews, attitudes, behaviors, and provides an environment for interaction and understanding, as well as playing a crucial role in conditioning and forming the human mind. And now, let us proceed to intercultural communication. So, what is intercultural communication? This refers to the exchange of messages between members of different cultures or co-cultures influenced by their unique cultural perceptions. In other words, intercultural communication is the capacity to communicate with people from diverse cultures. So communication is impacted by the diversity of backgrounds and cultures. In reality, culture increasingly influences how individuals perceive all forms of communication. However, due to the difficulty in understanding some aspects of communication, such as language, context, and meaning, individuals with diverse backgrounds frequently have trouble digesting meanings as well as comprehending conversations. So communication problems often occur when there is lack of understanding about how certain cultures work. So how to lessen miscommunication in an intercultural context. So understanding that no two people are the same and that everyone comes from potentially different culture is the best way to reduce misunderstanding in cross cultural settings. So the only way to possibly bridge the gap caused by cultural differences is to observe and learn about other people's cultures. That would be all. Thank you.
One framework for understanding intercultural communication is the concept of high and low context cultures. This concept refers to the various cultures placed upon direct and indirect communication. According to scholars, high context and low context cultures rely on verbal and nonverbal cues present in the interaction to draw meaning from the message. Now, the high context cultures take into account the background information of the sender and receiver when comprehending messages. Asian, African, Arab, Central European, and Latin American cultures are generally considered to be high context cultures. For these cultures, they tend to put a premium on the relationships they have with the people they interact with. Productivity would depend on how these relationships work within and among the members of the group. Nonverbal cues are very important and more often control how the message is understood more than the verbal cues, which may be more indirect than direct. Contrary to high context cultures, the low context cultures prefer direct over indirect communication. They may not put too much value on the nonverbal cues present in the communication. Relationships do not seem to play a significant role in the communication process. Ideas and information are sent and received explicitly. According to Carl Kensey Goldman, people in Japan, a high context culture, would rather communicate face to face than over electronic devices, which are often preferred by people in highly industrialized countries like the US, UK, Germany, etc., which are considered low context cultures. This is because the Japanese place more value on the relationships they create and establish through communication. The United States can be considered as an individualistic culture which emphasizes individual goals, whereas Japan can be seen as a collectivist culture wherein a person defines himself based on his relationship with others. Therefore, cultural differences shape how people interact and communicate with one another.
Good morning. So, in continuation, there are also potential areas for misinterpretation in intercultural communication. So, when we say intercultural communication, it refers to the process of communication that takes place between individual or groups from different cultural backgrounds in different countries around the world. According to Mr. Aegis Schooler in 2003, he said that miscommunication in a cross-cultural setting can be minimized if one is aware of the different areas wherein misinterpretation can occur. So he pointed out that when people from different country communicates, it is important to know where misunderstandings might happen, because in this way we can try to prevent them, right? Okay. Imagine like a road with bumps. If we know that that road have many bumps, we can drive more carefully to avoid them. So, being aware of potential problems in intercultural countries, it helps us talk with each other much better. Do you agree with that? Okay, so as what you can see on the screen, these are the potential areas for misinterpretation in intercultural communication. First is we have opening and closing conversation. So certainly, different cultures have distinct customs for addressing and interacting with people. This includes who should initiate a conversation or how they should be addressed formally or informally, and when it's appropriate to do so. So let's have an example. In Eastern countries like Japan, there is a strong emphasis on formal greetings and polite language. especially when meeting someone for the first time. They have this common greeting like, nice to meet you. However, in some Western culture, like in the USA, Australia, it's a more casual greeting like, hi, hello. They use that terms. So when this casual greeting will be put or will be used in the country of Japan, so definitely it could perceived as too informal by the Japanese people. So in that we can see the difference, the way they communicate. So it depends on the country you are in. Okay, so now let's proceed to the second one. We have taking turns during communication. Different cultures have their own preferred styles of interaction. Some cultures value turn taking, where people take their chances to speak in a conversation. In contrast of her cultures, like people take their chances to speak in a conversation, they might see giving an instant response as confrontational or disrespectful. So let's give an example. Again, in the country of Japan, it is considered too polite to wait for a pause before responding, because for them it allows the speaker to finish their thoughts. This can be perceived as active listening. But in contrast, in some Western cultures like USA, active participation in a conversation often involves interjecting with agreement while the speaker is talking, which may be perceived as a rude or interrupting in the Japanese culture. So if you tend to interrupt or interject during the conversation or during the communication in Japan, so you will be considered as a rude person. Again, we can see the difference. That is why this is considered as the potential areas for misinterpretation in intercultural communication. Third one, we have interrupting. So interrupting, in certain cultures, it is considered acceptable to interrupt during a conversation. So in some other cases, especially it's seen as contributing to the ongoing interaction. However, in some other cultures, interrupting regardless of the context can be seen as impolite and disruptive. So again, it's very important for us to be mindful of these cultural differences in communication styles to ensure respectful and effective interaction. So let's have an example in the country of US. Interrupting during a conversation is sometimes viewed as a sign of engagement and enthusiasm, because for them it can be a way of showing interest or expressing agreement. However, like the country of Japan or China, when you interrupt during the conversation, they generally see it as an impolite and may be interpreted as a sign of disrespect towards the speaker. So again, I would like to emphasize that we should be cautious on the way we communicate depending on the country we are in. And also, that is why it is really necessary for us to study or understand their way of communicating before we tend to go to their country, so that we can avoid misinterpretations. So that would be all for my part, and I will give the floor to my co-reporter. And thank you so much for listening.
Good day, everyone. So this is the continuation to the topic. I am Leoneline Estreba from BSAD Sciences. So now let's proceed to the using silence. So the silence and the amount of silence in the communication can be interpreted in many ways depending on the culture in which one is interacting. So In some cases, silence before a response to a conversation would give the impression of thoughtfulness and also consideration to the first speaker. So, on the other hand, silence can also come off as a sign of hostility. So, using appropriate topics of conversation. Appropriateness of topics could largely depend on the situation one is in and the culture one belongs to. In some cases, in other cultures, talking about money can be seen as unethical and embarrassing. In other cultures, however, can one easily talk or ask about how much a person earns. On the other hand, in Asian cultures, talking about family issues with those who are not part of the family can be construed as an inappropriate. Many Asian cultures protect family issues. Firstly, appropriateness of topics to discuss is not only determined by where one is from but also by their religion, educational background, etc. The next one is using humor. In Western culture, humor is often used as an icebreaker in communication to help establish rapport with others. In some ways, humor is used to make an atmosphere less stiffing and more relaxed. In other cultures and situations, however, using humor in a conversation may seem disrespectful. So that would be all. Thank you.
A pleasant day to everyone. I am John Val Candice Almedo, a fourth year BS Ed Sciences student. And now, I will be discussing another potential areas for misinterpretation in intercultural communication. Number 7. Knowing how much to say. Timing and content selection play a pivotal role in effective intercultural communication. Cultural backgrounds significantly influence how individuals approach and express themselves in conversations. Western cultures tend to favor a direct and straightforward communication style where people appreciate concise and to the point conversations. In contrast, Asian cultures often employ a more indirect and less confrontational approach, emphasizing the importance of maintaining harmony and avoiding potential conflict. These cultural contrasts can lead to potential misinterpretation. To overcome these potential misunderstanding and ensure successful intercultural communication, individuals must be aware of these cultural differences. They need to adapt their communication styles as needed, considering the timing of their messages and the amount of information shared. Being mindful of when and how much to say can significantly improve communication outcomes and bridge the gap between different cultural communication styles. Number 8. Sequencing elements during a conversation. Knowing when to introduce a topic is as important as what you say. The timing of introducing a subject can significantly impact how it is received. In some cultures, addressing certain topics early in a conversation may be seen as too direct, while in others, it may be expected. Consider timing for negotiation and asking questions. In negotiations, the timing of your proposals or inquiries can greatly influence the outcome. Different cultures may have specific expectations regarding when it is appropriate to discuss terms, making it crucial to adopt an approach based on cultural text. The same principle applies to asking questions during conversations, as timing can affect the flow and depth of the discussion. It is also important to take note that cultural differences may also be determined by age, gender, religion, education, position, political affiliations, and so on. Another thing, intercultural communication is an ever evolving process. As culture continue to grow, adapt, and interact with each other, how people communicate will continue to change over time. It is important to understand that differences in culture should be studied to allow for better communication and interaction among the members of the global community. And that would be all. Thank you for listening.